Good evening, I'm Tim Vetter. I'm a manufacturing equipment engineer, and I use data to determine the production throughput, part quality, and general health of our production equipment. At work, all decisions are data-driven. If my source data is not accurate, I could be wasting millions of dollars per hour. What is the value of timely, accurate election data? If an American, what is the value of your vote? What is the value of your freedom? Election integrity should not be a partisan issue. It is an American issue we should all embrace and defend no matter who wins the election. Our state legislature has not properly investigated the 2020 election. Most, not all, of them have turned a blind eye. Why did it take True the Vote and the Election Integrity Force, which I'll call EIF from this point, and all other non-governmental organizations to find that the data manipulation discovered so far, and what data manipulation is yet to be found with a proper investigation of our elected leaders, by elected leaders.
Keep your mic on.
These are our elected leaders who take an oath of office to serve the American people. They have been delinquent in protecting our most sacred freedom, the right to free, fair, legal, and transparent elections. This is un-America. I personally consider them traitors.
Yes.
I want to be clear that I stand alongside all the dedicated city and jurisdiction clerks who conduct free and fair elections and continue to work hard for election integrity. The source data I am presenting is damning. It's clear evidence of statewide data source manipulation from the top down, not manipulation from the bottom up, from the local clerks. This presentation is the joint effort of dedicated and very talented volunteers within the EIF group. It shows that irrefutable data manipulation has happened and is still happening with the source data acquired from our Secretary of State office from Jocelyn Benson. I have a quote she recently said just 1 week ago. Quote, as Michigan's chief election officer, my responsibility is to ensure our elections are accessible, safe, secure, and that the results are an accurate reflection of the will of the people, end quote. Ms. Benson owes us answers before she can continue to make these false claims. So let's get into that.
Yeah, let's.
So, as you can see, I've presented some of the quotes from her. We won't waste time here. The first thing I want to talk about is chain of custody, because whenever you're working with data, you want to always know what is the source of that data, and is that data reliable? Is it accurate? And the key thing I want to point out here is that when you take the zip files we get from the Secretary of State, these are supposed to reflect right after the election in 2020. So when you unzip them, that's what you look for. And you're also looking for proof of who bought it and who you got it from the Secretary of State. All the data I'm presenting to you here today has chain of custody. It's irrefutable, it's damning, and it came from our Secretary of State. You'll find many of these reports on the EIF website. I'm going to focus today's report on Report 5. Report 5 just broke this weekend. This is all new content, not revealed in Michigan. I'm going to just briefly tell you about Report 3. Brady touched a little bit on it. But to tell you how widespread that issue is with 0 in-person votes. There were 131 precincts throughout 57 counties where there were 0 in-person votes. So you either have all those local clerks messed up, or it had to happen from the top down. 0 votes, 0 in-person votes are reflected in the qualified voter file. As you can see here, we start listing them out. If you go to report number 3, we start with the A's and we go down alphabetically. You'll be able to see each and every county and precinct where we were missing votes. Mind you, as Brady said, 7 days after the election, you should have 0 missing votes. Report number 4. This gives a statewide overview of what you would expect to see from your Secretary of State. So everyone knows about the 8 million records. That is our voter registration database. Many people don't know much about this voter history database. So whenever you vote, you end up getting information into voter history. Your whole voter history is a separate database. That's where they record who votes in what election. Keep in mind, if you're registered to vote, you're in this database. How many times you vote is over here. And as you can see, 8 million voters. We typically have 48 million in our history file. You do the simple math. 6 times 8 is 48. On average, 6 votes per person, right? What happened right here? Right after the November 2020 election, we have a QBF dated December 1st, but it's not 48 million, it's 43.8 million. And then without any election whatsoever, it jumps 4 million records in April. We're going to talk about that. So I'm going to introduce you to EIF report number 5. Braden showed you Christina Parano's slide. We now have names for the kind of data manipulation that we see occurring in our QVF file. So on the left here, we call this scrub voting history. And we're going to show you how many and to whom. We have every name, every jurisdiction. We know all of that information. The other type of data manipulation is we are calling that delayed voting history. What do we mean by delayed? These people voted. How many people voted in the election but didn't get credit for their vote until sometime later? As you can see here, Ms. Christina Paramo didn't get credit for her vote until February of 2022, nearly a year and a half after her election, or after she voted.
Delayed reaction.
We found 930,260 fell into the scrub voting history area. 930,260. The other thing we found by doing our data analysis, we found that if you see the horizontal blue line, everybody got their history back in April. Thank you. Thank you very much. The other thing we found is the vertical line is showing you that most individuals had their history removed starting in August of 2018. But we happen to know Gretchen Whitmer. She lost that information also for 11/6. You remember, there's almost 1 million of these people that had their history removed. By law, the Secretary of State must have at least 5 years of your history in your voter history file. So this is a violation of law. The second type of data manipulation is you voted in the election, but when did you get credit for your vote? By law, it's supposed to be 7 days. So let's see what we got here. What we did is we're showing the date of November 10th, 2020. We would have expected a QBF to reflect everyone's vote 7 days after the election. So if we could have gotten the data at that time, it was a struggle. That's what you would see. You would see all the votes accounted for. There would be no missing votes, and there would be no votes removed, and no votes delayed. As a matter of fact, with all the votes accounted for, added votes after because they're already in there. Why do I have a column for delayed votes added? As you've seen in Christina Karamo's history, she didn't get credit for her vote until February 2022. Christina Karamo falls in this category here. She's joined with over 11,600 people who did not get their vote until February of 2022. And as you see here, when we got our first QBF, I would have expected 0 missing votes. There were over 104,000 missing votes. And not only did it show how many we had missing, we ended up getting 915 more, as you can see here. So now we're not missing as many. And then when you get to April, we're missing even fewer. 35,000 more were added. The best one we got is in April. But what I want to stress to you, and I'm going to show you in this slide, when you're looking at that 915 difference, see the 915 here? It's not 915 new votes. What that means is that there were 21,556 removed, 22,471 added. So this gets into a little more difficult math here. We have to, what we're doing is we are figuring out that we didn't just get 915 more votes between December and January. We actually had 22,471 delayed and added. So we're looking at how many votes are removed and how many are added. And the other thing you want to notice is on a typical month, you lose about 8,000. But they really pull a lot of votes out close to the election. Those numbers should not be as high as they are. They should be much lower than this. So they are purging the voter rolls.
So I voted in November.
Yep.
Okay. Did my vote count that day? Or what if I had
The question is, I voted on election day, did my vote count? And the answer is, I don't know. That's my answer. Because if your vote counted, you should have a QBF that shows all votes in the QBF 7 days after the election by law. That is required. But as you can see here, these are actual numbers. What these actual numbers tell you is that people's votes were not added to the QBF until sometime much later. That is called data manipulation. We as American voters, we want to know who is manipulating the QBF and why are they doing this? Because it's a violation of law. And why are our elected representatives not investigating these kinds of issues? So we talked about delayed votes added. Well, we have, as data people, we have that list. We can identify, as you can see here, all the different townships, how many, we have the names, the addresses, that's all Freedom of Information Act. So when you get that data, you know where a lot of these issues are occurring. The question that we have is, with this list, where we're removing votes and adding votes, how many of these are duplicate voter IDs? You want to take a guess? Now, how would we end up having duplicate voter IDs? Because there's only one voter ID per person. So, if you look here, you're going to see that this individual, you don't need a name, they have a voter ID, voted on election, but their vote was removed in January, but then it was added back in April. Why? How many of them were there? There were over 17,697. This is easy information to pull from the QBI. Why? I would like to know. The best, I can assume, but without an investigation, I can't say for sure. But what this tells me as a data expert is that they have multiple databases and they're manipulating back and forth. what I want you to notice here is and what Dr. Frank actually pointed out about my data, or our data, is that here we even have triplicates. So in this example, voter ID 39281 was in, removed, added, and removed again. So this is clear data manipulation, it's irrefutable is the proper word. You can't dispute this. The question was, would the board of canvassers know anything about this information at all? Quite frankly, before they can certify an election, they should be able to produce a 100% list on the qualified voter file before they certify an election. That's my opinion. How they certified and with what data, I don't have an answer. What I want to talk about here is when you remove your duplicates and triplicates, I originally we were just shy of 7,000 votes if we were trying to reconcile and try to find everything that was added over time. Well, when you remove all the duplicate voter IDs and triplicates, now we're back down to 24,000 that we can't find. How convenient is it that over time we never have been able to come close to a list of voter IDs that voted in the election? Not only is that unfortunate, but that is what we have with our current Secretary of State. There was a question before, how do I know if my vote counted? We have, in our qualified voter file, we were tipped off because we have actual people that we canvassed, and we know that they know they voted in person. They vote all the time in person, but they were told that the qualified voter file shows them voting absentee. So what this yes means is, did you vote absentee? The answer is yes. When the person was told that, they were livid, obviously, right? How many of people are like this? The only way we can figure this out is by canvassing and asking the voters, how did you vote? And so we've done that a lot with EIF. We've got information on about 50 people, but we know that number has to be a lot higher. From a data standpoint, we did queries, and we looked at the pattern. How many people voted absentee but never voted that way in the past? That number is 843, almost 844,000. COVID, yeah. 844,000? I don't know. These people who vote in person are passionate about going in on voting day. Let's talk more about vote switching. This is more clear evidence of data manipulation. So what we have here is we have the names, we have their voting history. When you compare one QB update to the next QB update, give me a list when their votes switched from no to yes. This is in the QBF. It's undisputable. We don't have an explanation for it other than this is a clear sign of data manipulation, multiple databases, and what you end up having here is Darren Caldwell. He starts off with a no yes, but then because he gets repeated in future QB updates, he ends up getting a little bit wacky with our data analysis. And you can see that because he's listed in the history file twice, voting in the election. I'm not saying that he voted twice, I'm saying he's listed in the history twice, both in person and absentee. Of course, if he actually did that, that'd be a violation of law. But wouldn't you, if you had your voting record showing you voted twice, you definitely want that cleaned up. So this is a public service announcement to Darren Caldwell. And by the way, we got about, we have 143 people who had their votes switched. they would probably like to correct the record, whether it was in person or absentee. But their history is showing that they're changing their vote. Not them, but the SOS. So here is more evidence of voter manipulation and ballot stuffing. We have many locations where, as you can see at the United States Postal Office, they're not shy. They actually have all the people that voted absentee. And as you can see in the P.O. boxes, they list apartment numbers, unit numbers. These are their primary addresses, which should not be in the QVF, listed as such. So different ways that, as data engineers, that we can find these types of issues. We have lists now that we call it Ghostbusting. We have all these locations where we know they should not be voting. Another method that we use is apartment complexes. Some have 100 units. They should all have an apartment number. Think about your street address. Say I live on Telegraph Road. Well, what's your street number? Same thing with a big apartment complex. I live at this location and I don't list my apartment number. How are they going to get a ballot to you? So we have methods now where we're able to flag and find all these types of methods that are used to store what we believe are harvested ballots. We can't prove it. We actually can't find these people because we don't know where they are. But these are items that we're getting to our sheriffs, just so that you know that there's follow-up on our side.
Very cool.
So obstruction. Of course, there's always been articles about our Secretary of State and how she's preventing the will of the people to be followed. ERIC is the electronic registration information system. Yes. And it's got to go. When Christina Caramo gets in office, that's one of her first priorities is to get rid of ERIC. Jocelyn Benson was the one who brought it on board. ERIC has done exactly the opposite of what it's supposed to be, what its goal is to achieve. Voter registrations are increasing, they should be decreasing. And there's also a lot of different other issues that we want investigated related to ERIC's involvement with our election. To sum things up, phantom voters, chaos, duplication. According to the Office of the Auditor General, it clearly states that the local clerk is responsible for the data that's on your qualified voter file. And right now the clerks are in a quandary because now there's many other ways that the data gets changed and put into the voter rolls. That's creating a lot of these issues. So there needs to be improvements here, and we're working with different organizations to help make this a much better, cleaner QVF. So I'm going to wrap up by saying thank you for your time, and I hope this was informative for you.